There comes a point where language ceases to be neutral and becomes revealing. It's the moment when, within the church, we no longer ask ourselves how to accompany the world, but whether there still exist boundaries that cannot be crossed. In the interview published on February 5th on the digital platform, Per Mariam, one of the most recognizable voices of American Catholicism, decided to speak without extenuating circumstances, bringing back to the forefront a question that many avoid. Can the Church afford ambiguity when its most fundamental principles are at stake? The speaker was Cardinal BURKE, who placed his reflections within a broader framework, marked, according to his analysis, by growing confusion on fundamental ethical issues. The intervention comes at a time when the internal debate within the Church appears increasingly fragmented, not so much on disciplinary or pastoral issues, but on moral principles that for centuries have been considered established. This is precisely the starting point of the Cardinal's analysis. The idea that today we are not simply witnessing a plurality of approaches, but a true confusion in the way certain basic truths are presented and understood. According to what has been stated, the greatest difficulty lies in the fact that issues belonging to different levels are often treated in the same way. On the one hand, there are areas in which comparison, evaluation of circumstances, and prudential discernment are legitimate. On the other hand, there are moral principles that, in the Catholic view, do not depend on historical or cultural context. It is this distinction that the Cardinal insisted on with particular force, believing it to be increasingly less clear in ecclesiastical discourse today. In his speech, he explicitly recalled the category of non-negotiable moral principles, underlining how some acts are considered by Catholic doctrine to be incompatible with the moral order in every situation. From this perspective, it's not a matter of subjective evaluations or personal sensitivities, but of a teaching that the Church has always presented as universal. The confusion arises precisely from the attempt to relativize these principles, presenting them as dependent on circumstances or intentions. In support of this position, the Cardinal recalled the theme of the protection of innocent and defenseless human life, pointing to it as an emblematic example of a line that should never be crossed. In doing so, he referred to the situation in the United States, citing annual data relating to human lives taken before birth. The language used to describe this reality was deliberately direct, precisely to counter what is perceived as a tendency to sugarcoat or abstract an issue that, in his view, has concrete and dramatic consequences. This reference to numbers was not presented as a neutral statistical fact, but as a moral element, capable of questioning consciences. According to the Cardinal, when we lose sight of the gravity of what is happening, it becomes easier to accept linguistic and conceptual compromises that end up numbing our perception of the problem. Hence the insistence on a terminology that does not hide reality behind technical or bureaucratic formulas. The discussion then moved on to decisions regarding the final phase of human existence. In this area too, the Cardinal stressed the need for a clear position on the part of the Church, especially regarding the basic assistance owed to the most vulnerable. According to the statement, any ambiguity on these issues risks generating confusion, not only among the faithful, but also among those working in the healthcare field. Alongside the doctrinal dimension, the practical aspect also emerged forcefully. The Cardinal emphasized the importance of concretely supporting initiatives that seek to embody Catholic teaching in the educational and medical fields. Medical schools and healthcare facilities entirely inspired by the Christian vision of man are presented as a necessary response to a cultural context increasingly distant from such principles. The interview also addressed the issues of human sexuality and marriage, described as areas particularly exposed to contemporary cultural pressures. According to the Cardinal, one of the most common errors is to reduce the sexual dimension to a matter of individual desire, separating it from its relational and generative meaning. From this perspective, Christian tradition is invoked as the guardian of a broader vision in which love is not separated from responsibility. Marriage, in this framework, is not presented as a simple social construct, but as a reality founded on a natural order that precedes individual choices. Precisely for this reason, some widespread practices are interpreted as a questioning of its profound truth. The Cardinal spoke of an attack on the very structure of marriage, not so much through explicit declarations, but through a progressive erosion of its meaning. Ample space was also dedicated to the family, described as one of the places where the tension between the logic of sacrifice and that of immediacy is most clearly manifest. According to the Cardinal, contemporary culture tends to present renunciation as a loss, while the Christian vision interprets it as a necessary step towards a greater good. In this sense, difficulties related to family life are interpreted not as a failure, but as part of a fruitful journey. In connecting these themes to the broader cultural dimension, the interview touched on the theme of discouragement that affects many believers. The Cardinal described the temptation to perceive public commitment in defense of certain values as a battle that is already lost, almost anachronistic. This perception, according to him, arises not only from external factors, but also from a progressive loss of faith in the possibility of truly influencing reality. This temptation is countered by the idea of a mission that does not depend on consensus or immediate success. Defending life and family, from this perspective, is not a strategic choice, but a consequence of faith. It is a task that leaves no alternatives, because it is rooted in what is believed to be true, regardless of the reactions it may provoke. In the final part of the interview, the Cardinal addressed the issue of the drift from the faith, describing it as a process that goes beyond a simple moral crisis. This, in his words, is an abandonment of the gospel and fundamental moral law, which leads not to greater autonomy, but to a form of rebellion destined to have destructive effects. This dynamic is seen as one of the most serious challenges of the present time. Taken together, the statements contained in the interview are set in an ecclesial context already marked by strong tensions between different approaches. Precisely for this reason, the Cardinal's intervention has provoked contrasting reactions. On the one hand, those who see it as a necessary call for clarity. On the other, those who consider it excessively rigid. In any case, the words spoken bring back to the center a crucial question for the Church today. Whether, in the face of cultural pressure, it is still possible to maintain a firm and coherent line on what remains essential for the Catholic tradition. What do you think? If you liked the video, comment Amen. God bless you.